AB 744, Tirico, from today's agenda. That is not on today's agenda. Again, as we normally do, we'll be taking testimony for two witnesses in support, 2 witnesses opposed against each bill, each witness having 3 minutes to speak. Other witnesses will just be asked to state their name, their organization, and their position for the record. I ask you all, this is a small room, to take your conversations out of the room if you want to talk, so that the members of the committee can hear the testimony and can raise the important questions that they need to do. And with that, will the Secretary please call the roll, because we have a quorum.
That's a good idea. Lowenthal.
Here.
Huff.
Here.
Ashburn.
Present.
DeSaulnier. Harmon. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley.
Here.
Semidian.
Here.
Wolk.
Here.
We have a quorum. Our first author, we usually go in file order, I believe, is Assemblymember Nava. Welcome to the committee. I think then is Assemblymember Block. If you two want to discuss about it, flip a coin. We'll pass one bill and we'll keep the other bill in committee. Assemblymember Block.
Kindly offered to let me go first.
Thank you. AB 628. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators, I'm bringing back today AB 628, a bill this committee recently discussed. I've added amendments to the bill that I hope satisfactorily address most of the committee's concerns. AB 628, you'll remember, defines a new pay-by-plate method of toll collection for non-fast-track customers who use toll roads and toll bridges in California. Currently, many drivers who use a toll road on an intermittent basis don't have accurate cash or a transponder unit. The technology for pay-by-plate toll collection is already in use to capture images of license plates and process them for toll violations. These same images can be used instead for authorized payment of tolls under pay-by-plate. This bill does not require that a toll agency institute pay-by-plate processing. For those that do choose to institute pay-by-plate, however, this bill will remove the violation for passing through a toll booth without immediate payment, so long as the user complies with the terms of pay-by-plate and fulfills the toll payment afterwards. Previous committee concerns are addressed, I believe, in the amendments. Let me briefly review how we address these concerns. As far as a public information program, a few members were concerned about information getting out about pay-by-plate. The amendments have new state standards incorporated that would require information about the toll amount, about the process for payment, and about the period of time for toll resolution be included by the agency, that they in fact publish this information on their website, that there be media advertising, that there perhaps be public meetings, and that there be signage. So these are all different options for the public information to get out. Secondly, there was a concern about an administrative fee. Some senators were concerned that an administrative fee for pay-by-plate would be added in addition to the toll. The way we're addressing this is there will be a toll posted that is the entire toll for pay-by-plate, as well as a toll for cash, as well as a toll for fast track. So the users will know by signage before they choose an option what it will cost to use pay-by-plate versus what it will cost to use fast track versus what it will cost to use cash. There will be no administrative fee added in addition to that amount that is posted. Third of 4 questions I think were raised was regarding privacy, and Senator Semidian was concerned about any additional infringement of privacy brought on by pay-by-plate. We're assured that the same images that are now taken and used for the purpose of enforcement of violations, the same photographic equipment and the same photographs will now be used instead to allow people to pay by plate. So there really is no additional photography being done, no additional infringement of privacy in that way. Lastly, a concern was raised about cash payment and whether, once pay-by-plate is instituted, whether certain toll agencies would decide to restrict or end the use of cash as a payment option. Right now, there are 2 toll facilities, SR 91 in the express lanes and I-15 in San Diego that use Fast Track only and don't accept cash. All other bridges and roads in California do accept cash, and currently none have plans to eliminate the cash option, with the exception of SR 125 in San Diego. All of these toll roads are run by autonomous public agencies with elected officials on their boards, and this bill leaves any ultimate decision in the future to whether to continue to use cash or to no longer accept cash as an option for local control by those local elected officials. Other changes in the amended bill address technical clarifications requested by CHP and Senate Public Safety Committee. All the state's toll agencies have been fully engaged with the development of the amended bill to address committee concerns. As of this moment, no letters in opposition have been received. With me today, as he was last time, is Greg Hulsizer, representing the South Bay Expressway, and Chris McKaylee. Chris McKaylee is also with us today to help answer any questions.
Thank you. Witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Greg Hulsizer, South Bay Expressway. Assemblyman Block, I think, has covered all of the changes that were made. We did spend a considerable amount of time with the other toll operators in California working together on the amendments, and naturally we're in support.
Are the witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Chris Walker on behalf of the Transportation Corridor Agencies of Orange County. They'd like to convey their support for the bill as amended.
Moira Top on behalf of the Orange County Transportation Authority in support of the bill.
Melinda McLean on behalf of the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, also in support. We do look forward to working with the author and the sponsor on some continued amendments. Thank you.
Are there witnesses in opposition? Members of the committee? Is there a motion on the bill? I'll move the bill. I'm sorry. Senator Pavley will move the bill. Would you like to close, since we've already heard the bill? And yes, Senator Simitian.
I apologize, just because I don't want to be misunderstood. Mr. Block, first let me say I appreciate your good faith willingness to look at the privacy issues that I raised at a previous meeting, particularly because I dashed into the end of the last meeting when we had the conversation. I think you make a perfectly good point about the fact that the system that you envision is no different than, and in that way no more intrusive than, the existing system. That being said, what isn't here, and the reason I'm going to be staying off the bill in a moment, is because we continue to we fail to confront and continue to fail to confront this issue. And so while the technology may not be changing, as more and more of the folks who go through these systems are going to be subject to these systems without privacy controls in place, that means it becomes a greater and greater concern to me. So I take your point. I think your point's well made, but regrettably, you showed up at just about the tipping point for me with respect to these privacy concerns, and I'm frustrated that we don't seem to be able to make progress on those privacy concerns, as there is an increasingly and ever-growing use of the system. So please understand. Thank you.
Understood, Senator. With that, I merely ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Will the Secretary please call the roll? No, is this as amended? No. This bill has a second referral, though, to public safety. So this is as to be referred to, referred to public safety.
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff. Huff, aye. Ashburn. No. Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier. Harmon. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Oropeza. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. Simitian. Walk. Walk, aye. 4-1.
Bill has 4 votes. We'll place that on call. You need 2 more votes for passage.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you all.
Next is item number 2, EB 566, Assemblymember Nava. Welcome, Assemblymember.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. Pleased to present on Assembly Bill 566. I want to thank the committee staff for their analysis and the suggested technical amendment that I will, of course, accept. In response to concerns raised by the opposition in the prior committee hearing, we have changed language in the bill. The bill now says that when a local agency is deciding whether to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove a map, they can consider whether the survey demonstrates that the majority of residents support the conversion. As we talked about a couple of weeks back, AB 566 is intended to close a loophole that has been used in recent years by some owners of mobile home parks who wish to subdivide and sell a park against the wishes of those who own homes in the park. The purpose of converting a mobile home park for resident ownership is to allow a cost-effective way for residents to own the space where their mobile homes are sited. Instead, the conversion process is increasingly being used by some park owners to sell the lots out from under their home, while offering little or no opportunity for resident ownership. This bill is an effort to give residents a voice in the conversion process, so they will have a greater likelihood of reaching a fair agreement with the landowners. Currently, park owners don't need to tell residents how much they're going to sell the land for, what the homeowners association fees will be under the condo conversion, or any other basic details that would allow residents to consider whether they would be able to buy the space under their house. This bill gives residents a place at the table and enables them to protect the equity in their homes. We have witnesses in support.
Steve Wallach on behalf of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. We're one of the co-sponsors of this bill. We do urge your support. We think the changes are still address one of the main concerns that's important to the Board of Supervisors, an inability to take into consideration the support of the homeowners when a park is converted. We feel that that's, while a small step, is a significant one, and we urge your support for the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, David Jones on behalf of the City of Santa Rosa. We believe there are two sets of property rights involved in this situation. We think that this balances out a little bit more in favor of making it more equitable between the two. So we would strongly urge an aye vote for this bill. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support?
Brian Augusta on behalf of the Golden State Manufactured Homeowners League and CRLA Foundation in support of this measure. We've made amendments that we think address the concerns about local control. We're just creating a process that puts everyone at the table. We worked closely to try to get a little bit closer to some of the concerns that were raised in the prior hearing, and for those reasons we urge an aye vote.
Christine Minahan, Western Center on Law and Poverty. I don't think I have anything to add. All of the issues have been covered, but we urge an aye vote to give everybody an opportunity to participate in whether or not their home is going to remain theirs or they will have to move on from the park.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? If you're a witness in opposition, do you want to just come up? You have to come up and state your name. Oh, you are in support. Come on up. Just 1 second, Catherine. Yeah, you can wait. Come on up. Is everyone here? Wait a second. Is everyone in here really wishing to testify in support? Is that what? Or you're just here? I didn't see any. Oh, you're in. I know you're all in support. Why don't we have at least the people lining up, or those that want to say, just state your name, your organization, and that you're in support, and then all the others who are in the audience, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you're in support at the end. 300 more outside. And 300 more outside. Let's just see. Are there anybody here that want to put your name who are in support? Just quick. Just go through your name and where you're from.
Bill Hahn, I'm president of the Chateau-Calistoga chapter. Can I say any more?
Just say you're in support of the bill.
I'm absolutely in support of this member. Condoization is elder abuse, plain and simple.
Good. You got your chance to say what you wanted. Now.
Don Hobbs, president of Petaluma Estate Homeowners Association in Petaluma, and we are definitely in favor of it.
Good.
Phil Dion, president of the country in Santa Rosa, also involved with the seniors and the seniors that vote and the veterans and the guide dogs for the blind. We support this issue. Thank you very much.
Henry Cleveland, chairperson of the Santa Cruz County Mobile Home Commission, and at our commission's request, the Board of Supervisors of Santa Cruz County endorses this bill. Thank you.
Clay Butler, Vice President of the Alamore Park Homeowners Association in SoCal, California, an all-ages park, mostly of families and children. And please support this today because next year may be too late for us.
My name is Jim Burr. I'm the legislative chair for GSMOL, and I urge your aye vote on this bill. Let's leave it up to the local folks to decide.
Thank you.
My name is Howard Lowe. I represent 200 residents in Santa Cruz County. We urge a yes vote on this so we can have control of our future.
Thank you.
Marilyn Madrone of Sebastopol, California, Sonoma County. I'm in the Fircrest Mobile Home Park, which is a senior mobile home park over age 55. We want our values of our property to be fairly retained, and we approve this Bill 566. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Robert Fleek. I am the Regional Manager of Region 2, the Golden State Mobile Homeowners League. My area covers from Marin to the Oregon border, and overwhelmingly we urge a yes vote.
Sirs, my name is Len Carlson. I'm the president of SCMOA, which is Sonoma County Mobile Home Owners Association. I've talked to all of my members within the last few meetings. We're not ready for economic eviction, so I would really want you to support this bill. Thank you.
Roger McConnell, President of Santa Rosa Manufactured Owners Association. Our members strongly support this bill and urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Robin Zimmer, Santa Cruz, President of Homeowners Association in Shoreline Mobile Home Park, where I represent over 200 people who asked for an aye vote.
Thank you.
My name is Jean Warnes. I am president of Sequoia Gardens Mobile Homeowners Association. We strongly urge you to vote yes so that we have some voice somewhere that can be heard. Thank you.
Sandra Fontaine. I'm a resident of Sequoia Gardens, Santa Rosa, California. Please don't not pass this bill. This is very important that our people have somewhere to live in their declining years, and if this does not pass, that will be taken away from us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Albrecht. I'm from Sequoia Gardens also, and I'm in support of this bill also, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Others who are in support, can you just stand up and let us see who else here is in support of this bill? It's pretty unanimous. All right. Thank you very, very much. Witnesses in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Member Trent Smith on behalf of the California Mobile Home Park Owners Alliance. I know we've had a long hearing on this a couple of weeks ago, and some of you even have probably heard this bill a year or two ago or a couple times. Couple things in response. The bill, I believe, is intended to provide locals more discretion or another factor in determining whether to allow a park to convert. From a historical perspective, as a reminder, as we brought up a couple weeks ago, the law in place now that is being proposed to be amended was brought forth by the residents. And at that time, the reason why the residents wanted a statewide standard was because the locals were doing different things in different areas and were not always being fair in the way that they were allowing or disallowing conversions. And so the tenants groups brought forth this law. We, as you asked, I think last time, Mr. Chair, the park owners groups had no position. This was something the tenants wanted to do because many of the tenants wanted the opportunity to buy their space and not have a landlord anymore. It is interesting that that law has been now on the books for over a decade, and there's never been any problem with that particular element. It was okay to have something in the law, again brought to you by the tenants, that allowed a minority group of tenants to get together and approach the park owner and say, we want the opportunity to purchase our lot, and to do that against the wishes, perhaps, of a majority of the other tenants. Again, a couple years ago in the debate, I think it was Senator Kuehl that specifically had a problem with that issue, and we had to remind her again, that wasn't something we brought forth. That was something the tenants thought was a good policy. And I can only speculate on why they thought it was a good policy, but it's what they chose to put in the law. Now, in recent years, as times have gotten more difficult to own and operate a mobile home park in California, and park owners have looked for a way to exit the mobile home industry, they could convert and make it a strip mall or some other land use. But they have looked at this as an opportunity to preserve the housing and to actually provide residents the ability to purchase their homes. The law currently states that there is a 4-year phase out of rent control for those who do not purchase their lots. And that's what provides, I believe, most of the people behind me the greatest deal of heartburn, the fear that they're not going to be able to buy their lots and be phased out of rent control. Again, brought to you by the residents themselves. It has been, I believe, presented that this is something that the park owners are using, exploiting as a sham, as a way of just getting out of rent control. I think we've explained in the past that that would be an economically and financially stupid business decision for anyone to do that just to get a couple of lots sold and then phase out rent control from everyone else, because it just, with the homeowners' fees and everything else associated, it doesn't make sense. The final word I will just say in closing, and I believe the author mentioned, he does bring up a good point with it's difficult. People don't know how much their homeowners' fees or what the price of the lot will be. That's because it is a very long, complicated, drawn-out process. You don't do this overnight. And that is one of the reasons why no one is going to undergo this process unless they are reasonably assured that they can sell a vast majority of the homes. Otherwise, it doesn't make economic sense. So we are still opposed to the bill.
Even with the amendments to may consider?
Yeah, I believe the amendment still throws the uncertainty back into that local government where, again, which was the goal to avoid in the first place, which is, are they, will they, won't they? We think they probably will always look for a way to get out of it, because they're going to have a committee hearing just like this. And we understand the pressures that come on a local government in this situation.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Thank you. Catherine Borg with the Western Manufactured Housing Communities Association. Again, we've kind of testified on this before, so you've heard a lot of the arguments. Mr. Smith did a great job on outlining a lot of the issues. One of the issues that wasn't touched on was that if residents are low income, according to the state guidelines, they get rent control for life. And they are not kicked out, their homes aren't sold out from under them. They have rent control for life while they remain there in the park. This committee asked us to go back and sit down with proponents, which we did. We did it in good faith. We did it with no conceptions coming into the meeting, trying to figure out how we could globally figure out how to fix this issue. The proponents showed up with the amendments that are in the bill today and did not want to discuss anything else, and that was their bargaining. That's what they were going to do, and that's what we had to accept. And we didn't accept it because we believe that there are other issues that can be fixed with this bill. If the issue has to do with whether or not median income or moderate income people are protected under rent control when the parks are converted, that's something we can certainly look at. That's something that's certainly fair. If it's trying to figure out this long, drawn-out process and whether or not we can, give residents, reasonably good information at the time of how much the fees would be or how much the lots would be, that's something that we can certainly do. But as Trent says, it is a long, drawn-out process, and we don't want to get in this quagmire of saying that it's going to be X amount today, and then because it took 5 years for the local legislative body to come to the final conclusion, it's, X plus 10. So that's the difficulty of giving figures ahead of time. So those are certainly things that we can do. The problem that this bill brings up and the way that it has been amended, and certainly they did correct one of the problems that was with the bill before was that we could never get to the local legislative body unless we had majority support of the residents, is the fact that now it is allowing the local legislative body to take that survey into consideration. And if you look out into your audience today and you look out into your hallway and you look into your 6th floor cafeteria in your basement, you're going to see that there are residents everywhere who are opposing the bill, and even if they are going to be protected under the statewide rent control provision. So our feeling is that Mr. Smith is right. Every time on the emotion, mobile home park owners get, are 100% of the time die on the emotion on this issue. Look at all the rent control that we have throughout the state. We do not fare well on local legislative bodies when it comes to rent control because of the emotion. So to allow a local legislative body to even take it into consideration that there is this type of opposition to the conversion, we will lose 100% of the time. And we oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other witnesses in opposition? Members of the committee? Senator Ashburn.
For Assemblymember Nava, I believe, current law, a conversion is proposed. The City Council, the Board of Supervisors, a designated planning body receives that application. What discretion does that body have?
Yeah. Senator, if I could, on behalf of the author, Brian Augusta with GSMOL, the discretion of the local government to deny that map is very tightly constrained as a result of the court's interpretation of this provision in the El Dorado case, which is one of the reasons that we're all sitting here today. The El Dorado case made it clear that the local government could not consider, or I should say, attach conditions to the map. They had to look at strict compliance with this provision, and could not deny the map, and had no discretion to deny the map or condition approval of the map on other other conditions which might be relevant to mitigating the impact of conversion of that. And so we tried to correct that in 930, which the opponents didn't mention today. They've talked about that before. 930, we think in this bill we're doing what we intended to do in 930, which is to take, as Mr. Smith said, a bill that was initially intended for the protection of residents, which has been used as, instead of a shield, a sword against residents, and to provide some further protections. And we think this bill today just clarifies that.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I can ask the question a different way then. The application for conversion is made. May the planning body or the governmental entity that's going to make the decision take into consideration the viewpoint of the residents of the property?
If every resident stood up and said, we oppose this map, if the proponents still have complied with every other provision of the Subdivision Map Act, they do not have the discretion to deny the map, and that's what we're trying to correct with this.
They are, and where in statute does it say that they shall disregard?
I think that was case law, a consequence of what happened with the El Dorado Palm Springs versus City of Palm Springs case in 2002. That is the way that local jurisdictions are interpreting the decision in what is called the El Dorado case. And so the park owners, the property owners, point to the El Dorado case and say to local government, if you don't, we understand that there may be, the residents have expressed to the local elected officials, they do not want to see the conversion. The property owners' lawyers say to City Council, we will sue you. And there are 20 lawsuits pending based on one form or another of that expression, that local jurisdictions do not have the authority to consider the residents' opinions as it relates to the proposed conversion. That's why I believe that the bill clarifies the language.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, if I can ask those who have an opposing point of view,
Absolutely.
I'd like to respond to that because I was working on AB 930 when it was around this legislature, and several of you were on the assembly floor when it came before this body. AB 930 was in response to the El Dorado case, but I differ with the assembly member on the characterization of what the El Dorado case did. The issue with the cases that are out there today is not with compliance with the section. It has to do with AB 930. We had lobbied it that it was not supposed to be able to allow the residents to have some veto of the park conversion because we know the emotion. So we had lobbied that, and in the assembly floor analysis that most of you voted for, it says the fact that a majority of their residents do not support the conversion is not, however, an appropriate means for determining the legitimacy of a conversion. The law is not intended to allow park residents to block a request to subdivide. Instead, the law is intended to provide some measure of fiscal protection to non-purchasing residents. So the intent truly was not to allow the residents to vote for this. We felt like that is giving them property rights, which we feel that this bill also gives them some form of property rights to be able to vote up or down whether or not the conversion is going to happen.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
The problem with that is that you're reading from an analysis and not from the law or from the court decisions which have followed. And so for me, in its current form, this bill is about the ability of the determining body, the governing body, to take into consideration the support and the opposition to the proposal. That's all it's about. And you're saying that the analysis of 930 said they shall take it into consideration, but it shall not be grounds in and of itself for a veto. And Mr. Nava is saying, no, that the opposition that may exist is expressly excluded from the tests that must be considered. And so, I mean, it's one or the other. And to me, that's the pivotal question.
Senator Simitian.
Yeah, I really wasn't going to weigh in on this one, but you did.
But you will.
I will. Here's my understanding as a member who voted on what I believe is the Keeley bill that we're talking about.
It was 930, it was the Keeley.
And I'm sorry I had to step out for a minute. The Keeley bill, as I recall, was initially drafted to confer greater rights on park residents, and Mr. Keeley scaled the bill back to a more modest proposal because that was what he could get. That's my recollection. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
No, that's what I recollect.
And part of the issue of having the Keeley bill was that there was some thought that the El Dorado conversion was a sham, in which that the park owner wanted to sell only a couple lots to get out from under rent control. But and since then, no one can point to, nor can the author or the proponents, where there has been a sham conversion.
Look, I'm going to get to cast a vote here in a minute, one way or the other, but in terms of the debate and the change about what is and isn't being proposed, I think that the previous comment was, in my judgment, and I'm sorry, sir, I've forgotten your name.
Mr. Augusta.
I mean, the way I would have put it is, right now, as I understand it, the law is essentially that this is a ministerial decision. There is a checklist, and that if a park owner shows up and has met 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different conditions, then the local governing body is more or less obliged, as a matter of law, to approve the conversion. And Mr. Nava came the last time and said, we think that there ought to be a measure of local discretion, and in fact, not only should there be some local discretion, but it shouldn't be approved unless there's at least 51% support. And the argument from the industry was, we don't think we should be precluded from even making our case with 51% as a threshold. And Mr. Nava has come back now and said, all right, I still want there to be some local discretion, which is different from the current situation, which is ministerial. But Mr. Nava is now making the argument, we've gotten rid of the 51% threshold, but we do want the local body to have some discretion, and the local body will decide whether 20% is enough, or 30% is enough, or 40% is enough, or 51% is enough. Mr. Nava, do I have your argument right?
Yes.
All right. Then, and I'm not trying to get to whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I'm just trying to understand what I think is the distinction between the current case, which is ministerial, because I think ultimately Mr. Keeley couldn't get what he wanted, which is phenomenon all of us are used to as authors, and scaled back his bill, and the bill ended up saying, well, at least there'll be a survey, and that will force owners to engage with their park residents, and that conversation will at least ensure that there's some give and take between the parties. But that was all it was designed to do, which the gentleman mentioned earlier, because it was, and now is, a ministerial approval. That's my understanding of how the law worked and why we're in the debate we're in today.
That's it.
Andrew Governor on behalf of WMA. I think you're correct on that. However, the Keeley bill was in response, and let's be clear, to the thought that there would be a sham conversion, that somebody was going to sell one home. And even in the analysis and the debate today, there's still kind of this premise that there's something wrong. But when you meet with the proponents, they talked about the reason why locals should have mitigating factors or be able to deny this, because they want to deal with sewer. They want to deal with rent. They want to deal with all these other factors. And yet this doesn't address any of those. Those factors are actually taken into account through the conversion process. We make it sound like it's a simple checklist. You go to the local body and we say A, B, C, and D, and it's done. When in fact you have to go through the state has to review it, the state has to determine liabilities. And so by just determining support doesn't give the proponents any more say or doesn't provide them any more assurances on dealing with mitigating. They brought up, wetlands. They brought up toxic cleanup. They brought up all these other factors. So if that's really what they want to do, then really what we're talking about is they want local control back.
And therein lies, I think, the core of this debate. And I think the one thing that folks could agree on is, right now, the decision is essentially, if you meet the criteria, must approve. Mr. Nava is suggesting that in addition to those criteria, that there now be an element of discretion on the part of the local governing body based on, at least in part, based on the level of support. That's the difference. That's what we're arguing about.
Mr. Chair, one maybe might be able to respond to both these. Again, to be very clear, the current law says that the residents, there has to be a survey of residents today. So that survey could go to the locals and it could show that everyone supports, no one supports, 20% supports, 50% supports. What this bill does now is throws the word majority in there. Granted, it says may, but now all of a sudden, instead of giving the local discretion of whatever it may be, you put into statute what we believe will become the floor. I mean, you throw majority in there. It's no longer considering how many or whatever. You throw the word majority in there, and we believe that every local government will look at that and say, is there majority of support, not majority of support, and that will be the key factor.
Let me just be clear. And again, this is without regard to what's right, wrong, what I believe, what anybody else believes. Under existing law, if there is a survey and the survey is properly done, whether 100% of the people say they're in favor or 0% of the people say they're in favor, if the survey has been properly done and the other items on the checklist have been completed, then the local jurisdiction must approve.
Correct. We just haven't seen a problem with that over the years.
Understood.
That may be true. That may be true, and it may be irresponsible. But Senator Simitian is correct. That is correct. And now it just says lines 11 through 15 on page 3. In deciding whether to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove a map pursuant to this section, the legislative body or advisory agency may additionally consider in that hearing whether the survey required by subdivision D demonstrates that a majority of residents support the conversion. And that's what it says.
I mean, why does it say majority? Why could that not say the survey shall demonstrate those in support and those in opposition?
It still does. It just
No,
says
but why a
this.
threshold? I mean, that's because the argument has been made is the minute you say majority, you have added another element. Even in addition to the approving jurisdiction being able to consider this where it is now, and I think our conversation has established that it may not consider the support or opposition in a ministerial act. I mean, to me,
so your
that's
question
a
then,
huge
Senator,
position.
to the author is, why did you put the word majority in? When you had may consider the survey is one. Now it's may consider whether a majority, doesn't say it has to be a majority, just says make. Why did you put the word majority in?
Because it makes it consistent with all other ordinances in local jurisdiction whenever they're trying to enact any kind of regulatory scheme. And so all that we are trying to do with the addition of the term, and please note, we don't say, we took out the language that had been here before that was being interpreted as requiring a majority indicate support. So we have compromised in such a way so that we've eliminated the challenge that the survey was a veto by residents. No longer can anyone, and it hasn't been argued here today, no longer can anyone argue that the survey provides the residents the vehicle by which to undermine or defeat the conversion. All we are saying is that in order to have good faith negotiations and conversations with the residents, that the survey may show a majority of residents support the conversion. Now, the local jurisdiction remains empowered, should they so decide, to look at the survey and determine that it is only an element in their overall decision making, and then come out with whatever decision they make. What this bill does is eliminate the claw hold that leads to litigation. Because right now, if the local jurisdiction looks at whatever survey is being performed and says, as part of their conversation with the property owner, we've looked at the survey, it doesn't demonstrate support for the proposal that you have, they go to court and they are sued. What this bill now does is allow the local jurisdictions to say, there's been a survey that's been conducted. It is an element of our decision making, and then issue their determination.
Thank you. Next, Senator Huff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It seems that what this is all hinging on is that word majority. Now, the author mentioned that it's consistent with other ordinances, and yet other ordinances, they have the authority to up or down, by themselves. As I understand this law, it's not to deny a project. It's just, the residents have been surveyed, and yet by putting majority in there, the implication is that that somehow carries weight, that carries meaning, that it gives it more emphasis, more power than what it actually should and what the law is intended to do. I mean, that's my understanding of this. So I think it would be a lot clearer if we had the language that Mr. Ashburn is saying, is that a report, is given to, without saying majority, because their words do have meaning, but just that acknowledges that a report is given. And it is what it is. It stands on its own.
Senator Huff, are you asking for an author's amendment?
Before we go that route,
sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to step in.
Why not?
I think this issue of language is actually a little trickier than maybe first apparent, because I had the same conversation in my head. And here's where I'm going, which is, so you might say, well, let's get rid of the majority, which right now what you've got is new language in the amendment that says may consider whether or not there is majority support. And that really becomes a binary choice. Either you're going to consider whether there's majority support or not. Mm-hmm. If you take out majority, which I know some people think is a high threshold and a problem, and say may consider the level of support, then that means the local body could say, gee, they had majority support, but I really kind of think that to do something this serious, you need 3/4 support. In fact, maybe you need 80 or 90% support. And all of a sudden, you're left with a number that can't be reached. So whatever perfection or imperfection we may attach to majority, I think it's not quite as easy as saying consider the level of support, because you consider the level of support, you could have a 5-member city council that says, you know what, we don't care if there's a majority. We're going to go with 90% as our standard because we just think it's not fair to do that to the 20% of the folks who still oppose. The way the author has constructed the language, the difference between existing law and what he has proposed, as I understand it, is that right now it's ministerial. It's a checklist. You do the survey, you're out the door. The author is suggesting that a local body may, if it wishes, consider whether or not a majority has supported it. But that, as I say, becomes a choice of either you do or don't consider whether or not there is or isn't a majority.
I think we've had a full discussion. I think Senator Huff has one more question, and then Senator Walk.
And thank you for letting me interrupt,
First, Senator Huff has completed his question.
Yeah, my question would just be, I can't support it the way it is, and if you were willing, so I guess it's more of a statement, if you were willing to amend out that word majority and just have more of a report, then I could support that.
Senator Walk.
Assemblymember, I just have a question along that line. If you just simply ended the sentence after the word hearing and said, may additionally consider in that hearing the results of the survey, is that consistent with what you want to happen? No. You want consideration of the results of the survey? Without talking about majority, 3/4, anything like that.
Well, see, I think what we're wrestling with the consequences of El Dorado as a result of the ambiguity that I think we've discussed, that Mr. Keeley, as part of the legislative process, made some compromises. And it seemed to me as though what Mr. Keeley was doing at the time was advancing the issue as far as he could. And what it left open was the qualitative characterization of majority. Because it seems to me that if I'm a judicial officer and I'm evaluating the claims on the part of the city as to how it is that they implemented their review process as compared to the property owner who says it was arbitrary and capricious, if a local jurisdiction is able to point to the language of majority and say, we relied on the majority, or a portion of our evaluation had to do with the majority, that is much more clearer than what we have now. And I think that if you eliminate the language of majority, you end up where we are currently.
Okay. Thank you.
That's my take on it, Senator.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because now you've given the consideration to the board. Before, they did not have the ability to consider this.
Correct.
Now you've given them the consideration. I think it's your choice. I was talking about Assemblymember Keeley, who made compromises. You would pick up at least one more vote by just saying, yes, local board, you can consider this in your deliberation as a factor. But you want to place majority, that's fine, but that's your choice.
I apologize, but I clearly didn't make my point well, because I know the folks who are sitting in the front row here don't want us to vote for this bill. I got that message. But if you're asking what is better or worse for them, taking majority out and saying that you could consider the level of support at any level is even scarier to them, I believe, than 51%. Am I right about that?
I would agree.
So the threshold question is, do you want to give people discretion? They would prefer not. Mr. Nava would prefer yes. After we get to that, at what level should they be able to exercise that discretion? Mr. Nava has said, well, they should be able to consider whether or not there's a majority. If you take a step back then and say, oh, they should be able to consider without any guideline what the level of support is, that means that they could say, we're disapproving because 5% of the folks disapprove. So
it's your choice, but I think that Senator Simitian has accurate, as far as we never know with a room full of lawyers what accurately means. But as much as this psychologist can say that Senator Simitian's interpretation is the one I think that the committee wishes to follow. So with that, unless there's first, is there a motion on the bill? Bill's been moved by Senator Kehoe as amended. You're already taking that, the technical amendment of eliminating the word additionally. So with that, would you like to close?
I do appreciate the direction and assistance of the chair in the earlier technical amendments, and I understand what Mr. Huff is proposing. And I think in having worked on this piece of legislation, having had conversations with the opponents who, in terms of our negotiations, essentially the break point was wanted me to support rent decontrol. And there was some possibility of movement if I were to support rent decontrol, which quite frankly works contrary to what it is I'm trying to do in preserving places for people to live. I think in having conversations with the city of Carson, who's involved in litigation over the existing system, compromising away from the earlier language that was characterized as giving residents a veto if the property owner was unable to obtain a majority approval for the conversion, including the language of majority that may be considered at the hearing by the legislative body, is, I believe, a fair compromise that provides the clarity that all of the parties, while they may not like it, I don't think that there's an argument that it is unclear. And so I would, with great respect, decline to accept the suggested amendments and respectfully ask for an aye vote as the bill is before you.
Thank you.
As amended.
As amended, will the Secretary, and the amendment is the technical amendment, not the amendment as suggested by Senator Huff. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff?
No.
Huff, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier? Harmon? Harmon, no. Hollingsworth? Kehoe? Aye. Kehoe, aye. Oropeza? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Semidian? Semidian, aye. Walk? Walk, aye. 5-3.
The bill has 5 votes. We'll place that on call.
Thank you, and thank you for the conversation.
Assemblymember Jones. That was a good discussion. That was a good discussion. We did. I think it's really what the core issue is. I cried a little as the onion was being opened.
Somebody ought to somebody ought to release apparently a very inflammatory letter.
Clear the room, please clear the room.
Clear the room.
Assemblymember Jones has a way with this committee. Everybody, he's trying to do his best, folks.
They're clearing the room.
Assemblymember Jones does not want everyone to leave.
Apparently
we're gonna take a 2-minute recess.
my bill's emptying the room.
2-minute recess.
of name is cool? What kind of name is cool?
It's Mom. Mom.
Your parents came over? Your
Yes.
grandparents?
My parents did. I was actually born out of the country. I was born in a refugee camp too in Thailand.
Oh, how old?
2. About 2 when I came here.
And do you remember any of it?
No, but my older siblings, yes, remembered a lot of things, especially during the war, and just trying to survive. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to not have to remember that.
Where'd they all go?
Probably is.
Well, I think we're going to reconvene the meeting. We've now kind of emptied the room in anticipation of Assemblymember Jones. And now, with that, welcome to the committee, Assemblymember. We're going to reconvene. We're going to start again. We're going to reconvene the hearing. No, we already have a quorum. We've already voted on it. Assemblymember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senators, appreciate the opportunity to present to you AB 636. I want to thank the chair and the committee staff for working so closely with my office, and also want to thank the California Highway Patrol and the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Public Utilities Commission on all of their input. And so we've come up with a set of amendments that remove all the opposition and have reached a very important consensus. This bill comes out of a number of recent tragic accidents, but maybe accident is frankly the wrong word to use, involving charter buses. And perhaps the most recent and notorious and tragic is one which occurred and resulted in the deaths of many of my constituents who happen to be members of the Asian Pacific Islander community, specifically Hmong and Mien and Vietnamese Americans, who were traveling to a gaming facility in a bus, as it turns out, that was not properly registered to be operating in the state of California and driven by a bus driver who did not have the proper credential to drive that passenger bus. And unfortunately, that bus crashed, killing a number of my constituents. What this bill does is takes a very important preventative approach, and it simply says, one strike and you're out. If you can't meet the very simple and straightforward licensing requirements to operate a charter bus in the state of California, if you can't hire a bus driver that has the proper license, then we're not going to allow you to continue to operate in the state of California. What I found out from sitting down for individual drivers, that's correct. That's an amendment we've taken. What I found out by sitting down with the industry, and the industry is a sponsor of this bill, is that by and large, the majority, I wouldn't say by and large, the majority of the charter bus operators are legitimate small business people who are making a honest living running charter buses and following the rules. But there are some folks in this industry who are not following the rules, who don't follow the simple requirements, who are operating unsafely, and who essentially stay one step ahead of the law, moving from place to place. They get a violation here, they move to the next place, they get a violation there, they get another violation, and they only get stopped when something terrible happens. So I don't want us to wait till another tragic incident. I believe, and this bill sends a very simple message, that if you can't follow the rules, you shouldn't be operating in the state of California. We have some witnesses who'd like to testify on behalf of the bill.
In support, I want to thank the author and also the staff and CHP and DMV for all working together to meet both the concepts and the needs of the author and still have a bill, I think, that really meets your needs and yet is one that I think has greater consensus.
Mr.
Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Josh Pane on behalf of the California Bus Association, a motor coach association of over 100 companies throughout the state of California. We pride ourselves on safety first. It's in our motto. And so when this tragedy happened, Assemblyman Jones called upon us. We sat down and we started working immediately. So we're proud to be the sponsor of this legislation. We want to thank the Assemblyman for his authorship and thank the staff for working so hard on these set of amendments. And we would appreciate your aye vote on this measure.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Yes. Hi, my name is Kua France. I'm the Executive Director for Hmong Women's Heritage Association. I'm one of the many community-based organizations that was working with the collisive bus crash victims. We are in support of this bill. We feel that this is a bill that will help protect vulnerable populations, such as limited English speakers and elders. This is a public safety issue in our community. A lot of our members, they utilize this as a means of transportation for entertainment and for recreational purposes. So I would urge you guys to support this bill.
Thank you. Witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mike Pell on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission, we are in support of the measure. First of all, I want to thank Assemblymember Jones and his staff for working with us to address our earlier technical concerns. We just want to note one minor technical issue with reference to the suspension provisions. We believe that many suspensions that are not related to safety may just involve paperwork, and suggest that the committee consider that the suspension provisions relate more pertaining to public safety issues. Other than that, we believe the bill is going in the right direction, and we'll continue to work with the author as the bill moves forward, and we urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in opposition? Is there a motion? The bill's been moved by Senator Kehoe as amended. Any comments by members of the committee? Questions?
Yeah, one quick comment.
Senator Simitian.
Yeah. You know, whenever you see a newscast on a story like this, you think to yourself, somebody ought to do something about this. So good for you for doing it.
There ought to be a law.
Somebody did do something about it, and that's Assemblymember Jones, and it ought to be acknowledged.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Thank you, Senator. There should be a law. Now there will be, hopefully. Senator Huff?
Yeah, just a question of the author.
Yes,
had this bill been in existence at the time of your mentioned charter that tragically resulted in many deaths, how would it have changed the outcome of that?
The particular rogue charter involved in killing my constituents had problems with law enforcement in the past. And what the Charter Bus Industry Association has told me is that this particular operator had run afoul of the law in other locations and then decamped to another location and then ultimately made its way here. So I'm convinced that our bill been in law, the first time they had been caught operating buses in violation with California law, under our bill, they'd lose their license to operate at all, and we would have avoided this tragedy.
Just looking at the driver's qualifications, he had some of the most stringent. He didn't have, bus driver's license. He had Class A. He had hazardous waste. They have medical report on file. So, I mean, he clearly was a skilled driver and can drive anything on the road.
I'll defer to my witness.
Well, it's a different thing when you drive 48 people down the road on a bus, Senator. It is very specialized. It may seem similar to a hazardous waste endorsement.
I guess it depends on whether legislators were the passengers.
Yeah. No, so it is very specialized. I can tell you, and we'd be happy to have you at the next conference in Carlsbad, the 31st annual conference. There's a bus rodeo. We allow folks to take part. I've taken part. Donna's taken part. And it is one of the most horrific things. I've driven a big truck before, but a bus, it's a whole nother thing. In this accident, tragically, and what happens, and those who drive buses for a living will tell you, when the bus starts getting off and it seems like the bus may have gone to the edge of the curb, and if you overcorrect on that particular model, it's tragic because you do exactly what this driver did. So he did not have an endorsement to drive passengers. So the other piece what would have happened. As Assemblyman Jones stated, we're hopeful that once law enforcement has this tool in hand, that other operators won't just be like, that I can go to the next CHP jurisdiction and I'll skate for a while. We think with this bill in hand, they'll be able to go confiscate the bus, impound it, and stop that operation, ultimately. And it's a harsh punishment. It was hours of debate within the association. We think there are enough safeguards in the law as it is, as the bill is written, to assure that a company that just happens to get through the cracks and there's just a problem and it's not a real deficient company, we believe this bill will still give the latitude. But, you know, if you're operating a vehicle that transports 48 persons, these are souls, these aren't potatoes. And if you're transporting those folks, you should at least be registered. And once you don't register your vehicle, and that's the case in this particular moment, then you should not be able to. And you put people on the bus, you should not be able to move any further in this life.
All right. Well, I understand. If I can just finish up my comment. I understand what you're saying. I would disagree about the level of difficulty of a bus versus somebody licensed for hazardous materials. When you're carrying hazardous materials, you have much more than just the occupants of a vehicle at risk. You have, you know, depending on the nature of the materials hauled, significantly higher risk involved. And I think we can stipulate that even people with all fully credentials have tragic accidents. And so we will never know had this bill been in effect. The thing I'm sticking on is one striker out seems rather difficult. I can see tightening up the regulations, but I just think that this is so punitive that it's a difficult bill for me to support today.
Is there a motion?
No question, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Senator Ashley.
There's two parts to the bill. There's the driver of the bus. How obvious is the certification that individual needs, that they've been properly trained to drive a bus? If you buy Mr. Ponet's explanation that driving a bus with these passengers is different than a truck with hazardous materials.
There's a specific endorsement you have to have on your license to do this. It's not a mystery what's required.
So it is an explicit
requirement. Yes. Yes.
You have to take a specialized test for doing just this.
And the second part of the bill then is the operator of the bus company that employs the driver must be satisfied, because the law says that he must be satisfied, that employee driver has this certificate, this endorsement, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And that is an explicit thing. I mean, it's
yes, sir.
No mystery about that. I mean, we get it. My mind is to the issue of employers determining, you know, the legal status of folks. You know, some of these, you say the law says you shall, but sometimes it's not that easy.
It's an observable credential, which can be checked with the credentialing authority. It's not a mystery. It's not difficult for employers to see. Unfortunately, what sometimes happens is the rogue operators give the drivers a pass because they're interested in just moving buses. And so, and the other thing the rogue operators do is even with the existing CHP inspection capacities, the rogue operators will actually hide the buses that don't have the proper licensing. So there's a whole unfortunate element to this that we're trying to get at by saying, look, these are simple rules, they're straightforward, they're explicit, every legitimate operator knows what they are, you follow them, and if you don't, you shouldn't be operating.
And that takes me to having, you know, a better explanation of the two elements. That takes me to Senator Huff's point. The owner of the company employs these individuals for whom he is responsible for making sure those drivers have the endorsement. He has no incidents, fortunately. So who looks to see if he's in compliance with this one strike and you're out of business provision? Who looks at that and when?
Well, you would look at it when there's a violation that's brought to one's attention.
The CHP would pull the bus over for some violation, for example. I'll give you an example. Last October, a bus was pulled over because it swerved into the median and nudged the median, pulled over to the side of the road. It was an accident by itself. CHP comes along. The driver doesn't have the proper endorsement to transport students. It's called SPAB, School Pupil Activity Bus. CHP says, well, you can't drive this bus. There's no penalty for that. Well, now the driver has to go back, so that's when you would catch.
But on the other hand, Mr. Chairman, it wouldn't be that unusual for the driver of a vehicle to take their eyes off the road for a moment and go into the median.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, in this instance, though, because the driver doesn't have this explicit endorsement, the company is out of business.
No, excuse me. No. Only if the company knowingly knew the person did not have it. The company is only liable if they knowingly allow this. It has to be proven that the company is an accomplice.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. If I may.
How do you do that?
I don't know. That's another issue. But I'm just telling you what the bill says.
Yeah. The DMV has a poll notice to protect the companies as well. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might just finish. The DMV has a poll notice system. So they send the company a notice and say, hey, that driver no longer has a valid endorsement. Pull them. That's called a poll notice. Companies get those all day long, and they have files on each driver. So they get proper notification. Now, if they don't get the proper notification from the DMV, they can say, hey, we never got notification.
And that goes to the point of the one strike. I mean, the opportunity for people to make correction. You're noticed, you make correction, you move on.
I think you made your point. I mean, I think that's the same point that Senator Huff has made, and I think you're elaborating on it. That is, does the punishment fit the crime is really what you're saying. And I think that both of you believe that it doesn't. But let's move on. Is there a motion on the bill? The bill has been moved by Senator Pavley as amended. Would you like to close?
I just respectfully ask for your aye vote because for the 10 of my constituents who were killed, there is no second, 11 constituents who were killed, there is no second chance. And there shouldn't be for buses that are not following simple operating rules. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, please call the roll on AB 636 as amended.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff? No. Huff, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier? Harmon? Hollingsworth? Kehoe? Oropeza? Pavley? Pavley, aye. Simitian? Aye. Simitian, aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye. 4-2.
Bill has 4 votes. We'll place that on call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to move the consent calendar?
We have one item on the consent calendar, SCR 50, Senator Cox's CHP Officer Raymond Carpenter Memorial Interchange. Will the Secretary please call the roll on the consent calendar?
Sure. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff? Huff, aye. Ashburn? Ashburn, aye. DeSaulnier? Harmon? Hollingsworth? Kehoe? Oropeza? Pavley? Simitian? Wolk? 6-0.
Consent calendar has 6 votes sufficient for passage, but we're going to place it on call for the absent members. Senator Senator Torlakson. Always a senator. Once a senator, always a senator. Pleased to have you before our committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, good to be back.
Former chair, Senator Torlakson of this committee.
We had an extensive discussion last meeting. This is a bill up for reconsideration. I have listened carefully to the committee and the dialogue we had. I have a number of amendments to offer. one of which I'd like to offer and then say I'm going to continue to work on it, but believe there needs to be some essential changes, and that's why I'm offering the amendment. So if I can walk through
Yes, I would,
the amendments.
I would appreciate your walking through the amendments.
Great. The first of those was on page 6, a concern raised about electronic toll collection and discounts for vehicles using Fast Track. We're going to eliminate that section on page 33, on lines 33 and 34 of page 6.
Page 6, lines 33 and 34.
This was a concern that Senator Simidian raised, and we agree that should be removed from the bill.
And what? And for electronic toll collection?
Those words, and for electronic toll collection, would be eliminated.
What about notwithstanding any law?
That may be necessary for the HOV language
Which
that
is fine.
precedes. Okay.
So fine, that's fine.
Okay. The next is in the following lines. There was a section that dealt with the authority's interface and relationship with Caltrans. Caltrans has offered some different language, so we will be deleting lines 37 to 40.
37 and 40.
And replacing it with new lines that are acceptable to Caltrans and the authority, urging cooperation, collaboration, where the two systems interface. I believe copies of that have been handed out. Have they been given?
I don't believe I have a copy of that.
Apparently, they're right there. So let me
Soon
read
to have a copy.
Let me read the new lines for you.
All right. Why don't you start on line 35, because that's really what's there, and then you're going to...
Okay. If the authority establishes high occupancy vehicle lane
fee discounts
or access for vehicles classified by the authority as high occupancy vehicles, then the new language starts: for any bridge, the authority shall collaborate with the department to reach agreement on how the occupancy requirements shall apply on each segment of highway that connects with that bridge. It basically says, previously it said, Caltrans and the highway department will do what the authority wants. This language says they'll collaborate and reach an agreement. That is an amendment that was proposed by Caltrans. The third amendment is...
Does this apply to the approaches?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Heminger with the Bay Area Toll Authority, yes. It's intended to deal with the interface between the highway and the bridge.
So it goes from the interface, which would be the approaches to the bridge, and the bridge.
Correct.
Thank you.
The next section was problematic the way it has been presented, and we're amending out Section 6, the entire section that deals with...
Page 7.
Page 7 and 8.
So Section 6 from line 9 through line 10 on page 8.
Correct.
All of that's been eliminated.
Right. And
or deleted. Delete,
and want to say...
Section 6.
We won't bring it back without having first... We won't bring it back in any form, but it's not acceptable in the current form. I understand that. I would like to work with the chair and the committee to look if there's some ways to address the issue of regional measures that would involve the legislature in the process somehow. I think that's a key issue that was raised.
So it's been eliminated as of now when this bill...
It's not in the bill. I would take it as an
I will
author's
tell
amendment.
committee members if this comes back or any changes, we will bring that bill back to the committee.
Could I ask a question at this point? First, let me say to Senator Torkelson, thank you for your responsiveness on the issue of discounts for Fast Track. The Second Amendment, I think I understand clearly. This Third Amendment appears to address an issue I've raised previously about going to ask for an additional increase potentially for non-bridge related matters without first coming through the legislative process. Do I have that part right so far, Senator?
That's your concern, and that's a concern I've registered in talking to you and understanding it. I don't think the bill in its current form is acceptable. I'm searching for some way and would work with you, with the committee, with the chair.
Mr. Chairman, here's the concern I have, and if we could get perhaps some commitment from the author, I would be loath to vote for the bill today with that language taken out, and then discover that essentially a variation on the same theme was back in the bill after an amendment was taken to get the bill out of the committee. Let me just be very clear. I've worked with Senator Torkelson for a long time. I got no concerns about his goodwill and fair play, but this has been a very contentious issue. And the fundamental issue I've expressed is that when we're talking about already going up to $5 a day for somebody who's got to commute, $25 a week, $100 a month, $1,200 a year, $1,500 when you're thinking about before tax income, that if there's going to be another increase, particularly if that other increase is not for bridge-specific work but for other programs, then I think that's a conversation that does deserve to be had here in the legislature. So are we clear that that's the reason the amendment's being taken out and the bill isn't going to move forward with something that would allow for an additional toll increase for non-bridge specific items without coming back to this committee? That's the question, Mr. Chairman.
And now the author?
Understanding the question, the issue of involving the legislature, something that would be in anything that would ever come back or be amended back in the bill. The question of the timing and the question of the frequency would be issues that I would want to explore, again, with the chair, with the committee, with yourself. And also, there's not, as I read Section 6, not as tight a definition of nexus, of how regional measures would affect the bridge traffic, either improving congestion or removing safety issues that deal with the corridors leading to the bridges. So those are the kind of conditions I would want to explore, whether such an authority could be brought back into the bill. At this time, it's out, and I would have close dialogue.
And you would agree, and our staff of the committee will work with Senator Simitian and also with the author, and that with the understanding that before this bill is voted on the floor, because that's when it would be, or amendments, that if there were those changes,
come back to the committee,
bring that bill back to committee.
The concern I have is I can see where we're headed here, and I understand that the author is in the difficult position of responding to the sponsor, but if the answer would be, well, could we have just one, or could we have without coming back through the legislative process, or could we do it if it's 2 years from now after people have gotten over the sticker shock? I continue to believe that if we're going to have a regional body like MTC, which does not have directly elected membership, and where it is very hard, frankly, even if there's a vote of the people by a simple majority, not a 2/3, to have a real community-wide conversation when you're talking 9 counties and 5-6 million people. I believe there is value in sunshine and open debate and discussion about what that measure is that will focus attention on a potential fee increase, again, on top of what is already going to be $5 a day for non-bridge purposes. So I'm trying to get a commitment out of the author that's a little bit, more final, I guess, about are we serious about saying we're done trying to bypass the California State Legislature for a future fee increase on non-bridge purposes. And I'm getting
I'll reiterate again that any version of Section 6 would not come back without some involvement of the legislature. I'm not sure what that should be yet, and I want to explore that. And I think that's the best I can do at this time in terms of offering to try to deal with the nexus issue, with the public input, with the sunshine. We'd be able to have a process, if it's acceptable at all, that would involve the legislature.
I believe that's as far as we're going to get today, and you'll have to make that decision.
On the earlier issue of the toll discount, I'm informed by staff that there is language in the Streets and Highways Code section 31011 that deals with discounts for fast track language, and I want to make sure that if you're willing to take this amendment, and again, I appreciate the amendment, that we don't use one code section to achieve a purpose which is being deleted thanks to your good auspices on the first. Are we clear about working that issue through if there's other statutory authority?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. And I apologize you were at point number 3, but I appreciate your indulgence.
Senator Huff.
There was two other amendments, if I could at some point run through them.
We'll get back to those. I want to hear from Senator Huff first.
Let me just say that the first amendment you're talking about in that amending the two bridges into the seismic retrofit thing, I like that. Right. And I'd like to associate myself with the comments made by my colleague Senator Simitian related to the tolls that are charged for something other than that, though that still causes grief and concern to me. And if that is something that you're going to put in later on, then I'd have to withdraw my support. But I mean, if you stick to the first part, I like that. So just so we're communicating well. And I think you know that from conversations we've had.
Taking that to heart. Thank you, Senator Huff.
Senator DeSaulnier.
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, I'd like to associate myself with both Senator Huff and Senator Simitian. We've been through the looking glass many times in the last few weeks. In regards to just the one comment by Senator Simitian in regards to the directly elected, having been a commissioner for 10 years, I never understood when this first came up why the commission would want this authority from a political standpoint, even in the Bay Area. So I do think there will be accountability because most of the commissioners are locally elected folks who aren't, even in the Bay Area, are not going to jump at the opportunity to raise tolls. So there's a certain amount of protection with all due respect to Senator Simitian. On the nexus issue, I'd particularly like to the degree that I have the ability to have the conversation, fully trust Senator Torlakson in this regard. But we, of those of us in the East Bay, we are concerned that the majority of the people who pay the tolls, that there is a benefit. And in the context of the larger Bay Area trying to pass a toll increase, ironically, Joe or Senator Simitian, you and I are on the same page. So be interested in that conversation and partaking in it to the degree that's possible.
Great.
Thank you. Are there other members of the committee that wish to make a statement now or ask a question? Not hearing any. Are there witnesses in support?
I do have a further question. If the senator has completed his amendment list, I think he had two more amendments.
Yes, let's hear the other two amendments.
Just briefly again, number 4 would be an independent review of the privacy issues of Fast Track.
Let's go slowly over that. What is that again?
We would add language, work with your staff and you, Mr. Chairman, to require that MTC, the Bata Bridge Authority, conduct an independent review of the privacy issues of Fast Track. And this is, again,
will be accepted as an author's amendment.
And the 5th was that the cash option of being able to pay up into the Fast Track system, so someone may not want to use the credit card. I'll have Mr. Heminger expound on it, but basically that option would be available at all toll booths, making it very convenient for individuals who do not want to use their credit card to upload credit on their Fast Track, that they have the cash option at every toll booth in all the bridges.
Thank you.
That, too, will be accepted as an author's amendment. Senator Simitian.
Thank you. Before we hear witnesses, just to get all these issues on the table, if I could ask my staff, members, it's great to be able to sit back and read the newspaper every now and again on the privacy issues, and I appreciate the 2 steps that the senator has indicated his willingness to take. Wouldn't you know it, but the Associated Press just this Saturday and Sunday has a story that says chips and official IDs raise privacy fears, talks about the proliferation of this particular kind of technology, the privacy concerns, and the various uses. Ask staff to share those with the sergeants so that they can share with the committee members. It was in this Sunday's Sacramento Bee. And then on the issue that I was raising at the last hearing, Senator Torlakson, the concern about whether or not we are slowly but steadily forcing people to take Fast Track, whether they want it or not. One of the key questions here is, choice. And so folks, in a conversation on another bill with another author, the reaction we got was, well, if you don't want to use it, then don't use it. Well, that's fair if there's a genuine choice. But I raised the concern, and Senator Kehoe, unfortunately, had the same experience in terms of watching folks whiz by while she was stuck in traffic for 20 minutes at a bridge. And we all understand we're going to be stuck at rush hour or on a Friday night going into the city. But sure enough, also in the newspaper this weekend from the Mercury News, Mr. Roadshow, headline is, Toll Booth Closing on Dumbarton Bridge Backs Up Traffic, which indicates that one of the 4 booths is going to be closed, according to this, permanently based on their conversations with Caltrans, which means that if we're talking about upping the fee from $4 to $5, that's a 25% increase at just about the same time we're having a 25% decrease in the number of folks who are there to take the money. And what I've said before and want to keep coming back to is it is adding insult to injury to say to somebody, I'm going to jack your toll up again by another $1, which is adding up to a significant amount of money, and then I'm not even going to give you the courtesy of having someone there to take the cash out of your hand as you go through the booth. And that's what I'm concerned about is if the way we're going to market Fast Track is by making it virtually impossible for people to pay the new higher toll, that's not really fair to the driving public. I can't believe that's something that you would support. Again, I know your record on these issues, but if we could get a little more assurance in the bill that we weren't going to continue choosing Fast Track is one thing. Effectively forcing Fast Track for anyone who wants to make it from point A to point B in a reasonable period of time, that's another thing. So if you or your sponsor could comment on that before we hear from witnesses, Mr. Chairman, that would help assuage some of the concerns that I've got.
I understand your concern. Our sponsor, Mr. Heminger for MTC, has a thought.
Senator, maybe just two thoughts. The first is on that particular lane, I believe we made a decision to close it, not permanently, but close it for now because we had less traffic. We've had less traffic during the recession. And so we have closed some booths because we didn't think it made sense to have people out there collecting tolls if there wasn't enough traffic. Now, we don't get it right every time, and we do try to react when we think we've gotten it wrong and we've closed too many booths. That's one reason that we spent some money making all of the signs above the booths variable, so we can turn them back on to cash if that's what makes sense. And I'd certainly continue to welcome your input in pointing out to us when you think we haven't struck the right balance, because we try to revisit it all the time. So in that particular instance, I think it was due to low traffic during the recession. In the general instance, we are trying to encourage people to use Fast Track, but we are not trying to punish cash users in the bargain.
Through the chair, if I may. So here's my question for you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to think about it for a moment, take your time. Are you encouraging people to use Fast Track by deliberately scaling back their options to pay cash?
We, when we do dedicate additional lanes for Fast Track, we do it with the thought in mind that we have enough additional Fast Track customers to make full use of them, and that we have enough residual cash-paying lanes for the cash payers. We have seen a significant increase in Fast Track use. We now have over 800,000 accounts, and so we have tried to match that with the capacity we have at the lanes.
But the concern I have deals not with the case where it's a, one or the other, where there are, for the sake of discussion, 10 lanes and 6 of them are Fast Track and 4 of them are cash. The concern I have is where we have drivers who are paying these higher and higher tolls who show up, and there are, let's say, for the sake of discussion, 10 lanes. 5 of them are Fast Track, 3 of them are for cash, and 2 are just sitting empty. And there's been a clear decision made by somebody, notwithstanding the fact that people are backed up 70 cars deep or 20 minutes long, there's been a clear decision by somebody to leave those 2 booths unattended and unavailable for folks to go through with cash. Now, when I talk to the good people who staff the booths and ask them how come, they're always very gracious and say, you need to take that up with administration, sir. So I'm trying to use this opportunity to take it up with administration.
Well, I appreciate your doing so. And look, I will pledge to you that I will go back to the office tomorrow and make sure we look at Dumbarton in particular and see if we closed it and have caused a traffic impact that's persisting and may need to revisit that question.
Let me just be very, I want to be clear. It's not about the fact that I go over the Dumbarton. It's not about the fact that I come up the Carquinez. And it certainly shouldn't be about the fact that any individual legislator has a slice of life experience and then somehow the world changes. But I've had enough experiences in enough different venues and heard from enough constituents that I have a concern that people who are ready to pay their toll, higher and higher though it may be, are stuck in traffic longer and longer. And the concern that people have, and I'm one of them, is that this is just part of the marketing strategy to force them into Fast Track whether they want it or not. And I appreciate your forbearance, Senator.
And to finish a thought that I was going to tag on to Mr. Heminger is I would work with the committee, with the chair, with all members who might have a concern to find some language. It'll be a little bit complicated, but I think there should be some intent language at least that is not what we are trying to get to, and that regulating the time of day and having toll booths staffed at a time of day when there's no one coming through doesn't make sense. having more lanes open when it's rush hour or weekends or ball games that would draw traffic across certain bridges. I would like to work to find the language that does that, to make it clear that it's not this legislature's intent or the statute's intent or the parties involved to create pain to the commuters who don't have fast track.
Thank you, Senator. I think that's both a helpful and a gracious offer on your part, and I appreciate it.
Are there other members? Senator Oropesa.
Senator, you know my historical position on toll roads and toll lanes and such, and that position does not change today. But having reflected on the big picture, which is what I say is guiding all of these positions that I take, I find myself in a situation where if I vote no on this measure, I will, in essence, be disallowing people of less means to occasionally, when they really need to get to that wedding.
Excuse me, we're not talking about hot lanes or toll lanes. This is only bridges in the Bay Area.
It's not the
right. That's Senate. That's Assemblyman. That's also MTC. But that's Assemblymember Torrico's bill. We have pulled that bill, and we'll be hearing that on Thursday.
Okay.
This is just the bridge.
Sorry, it's not yours. And on the bridge, on the bridges, the thing that concerns me on your bill, then, that I have to say is the breadth of power without a requirement that there be some light shown on the decision to increase toll. Are you guys going to work on that anymore? Are you just is it a dead issue?
Thank you, Senator Pesa. There are two parts of the bill. One deals with the urgency, in my opinion, of retrofitting the Antioch and Dunbarton Bridge and giving the authority to add those two bridges to the existing seismic program of the existing 5-bridge program. And by that inclusion in the Bay Area Toll Authority's jurisdiction, they would have the right to raise the toll to provide the roughly $1 billion that's estimated to be needed to do that seismic retrofit. So that would be done with full hearings, public scrutiny, the elected officials of MTC and BATA dealing with that. The second part dealt with regional measures that would relieve congestion, provide safety improvements to the bridges. I have removed that section today per the discussion we've just had.
All right. Then I think I'll be happy to vote aye on your measure.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other members wishing to ask? Are there witnesses in favor? You've already heard this bill. Are there witnesses in opposition? Do I hear a motion on the bill? The bill, as amended, has been moved by Senator Pavley. Assembly member Senator Torlakson, would you like to close?
I urge an aye vote. Thank you very much. Reverse alphabet. I'd like that. Torlakson's always last.
Yes.
That's leadership for you.
It is time. With that, will the secretary please call the roll as amended? And again, this has been a full discussion. I think the author has responded, I think, to the, maybe not to all the satisfaction of all the members, but I believe to the issues that were raised in the previous hearing. So with that, will the secretary please call the roll as amended?
Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Huff. Huff, aye. Ashburn. No. Ashburn, no. DeSaulnier. Aye. DeSaulnier, aye. Harmon. Aye. Harmon, aye. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Oropesa. Oropesa, aye. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. Semidian. Aye. Semidian, aye. Walk. Aye. Walk, aye. 8-1.
Bill has 8 votes, sufficient for passage. We're going to hold that open for the absent member.
Okay. 2 seconds about 1409.
Yeah,
That's where you're going.
Yes, that's the last bill.
Yeah.
don't we put you guys up there so they can, so they can consider it?
Roll your dice, move your mice.
Thanks. Got to sign by the speaker.
Like you do here around
They all told me they were your friends.
Yeah, they are my friends. That's my point.
Didn't you guys tell me this was a simple job? We did.
Any word from the other committee? Are there any members after me? Just 'cause we're-
This is Canterbury, our Canterbury.
Yeah, some cool history from like the 60s, Kennedys.
Along the lines of decisions. We'll go now. We'll go now. This will be
Item number 7, AB 1409, Assemblymember Perez. Welcome to Senate Transportation and Housing. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to present this bill. I'd like to begin by saying this is a simple, straightforward, non-controversial piece of legislation.
You'd like to say
Unfortunately, it wouldn't
like
be true.
you can't.
Unfortunately, it wouldn't be true. I am, however, pleased to present AB 1409, which amends the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, or the Act, to bring clarity to when and how a county completes projects on a public highway. Before I begin, I wish to make the committee aware of the fact that it's my intention to take an amendment after this committee that was inadvertently left out during the last drafting process. The amendment specifies that where inclement weather is a concern, counties retain the right to use their road commissioner authority regardless of whether they are signatories to the Act. Senators, AB 1409 repeals a section of the Act that allows counties to use a provision of a different section of the Public Contract Code, Section 20395, to complete projects using authority granted to the county road commissioner to complete work by force account.
The act was passed by the legislature in 1983 to resolve a longstanding disagreement between the construction industry and county governments over the appropriate method for completing construction and repair projects. California law is expressly clear that by default, construction projects should be completed by contracting work to private contractors. It's important to note that the act is voluntary and that counties may either enter or leave the act by a simple resolution adopted by their Board of Supervisors. A separate section of the Public Contract Code authorizes county road commissioners to complete projects through a variety of methods, including directly purchasing the materials and having the work done by force account or day labor. Force account is a general term which refers to workers paid for directly by the county, but who may or may not necessarily be public employees. That is, employees hired for specific projects and then released once that job is completed. The conflict arises in that the Act provides for a number of definitions as to what constitutes construction versus maintenance. The Act also further provides for specific dollar levels which are adjusted by the state controller to determine whether a project may be completed using force account or informal or formal bidding. The Road Commissioner Authority, however, predates the Act. It was established in the 1930s to provide flexibility to small, rural counties who are unable to complete their projects through an open bidding process because of technological limitations that made such projects prohibitively expensive. In order to provide that flexibility, the Road Commissioner had the authority, and it did not place a dollar limit on either amount of personnel or a project for the materials. Even though technology has improved dramatically over the past few decades and more projects are now feasible and should be put out to bid, some counties have continued using Road Commissioner authority essentially as a loophole to circumvent the open bidding process. AB 1409 addresses this issue by simply deleting the provision in the Act which states that nothing in the Act prohibits a county from exercising its Road Commissioner authority. As the committee analysis notes, there's no pattern discernible in which certain counties are more likely to join the Act than others. Counties as diverse as Los Angeles and Amador are not signatory to the Act, whereas counties such as Riverside and Alpine are. AB 1409 only applies to counties who are signatory to the Act. Only those counties will have to make a determination as to whether it's more sensible for them to join the Act or retain the Road Commissioner authority. Counties who are not signatory to the Act, such as Los Angeles and San Diego, will be unaffected by the passage of this measure. Senators, this is a very technical area of law, and I thank you for bearing with me as I presented this measure. In summary, we're seeking to bring balance between two very important laws that relate to how we build and maintain our county highways. California law is expressly clear that highway construction should by default always be put out to bid. However, the law also provides for exemptions for those exigencies when the open bidding process is infeasible for counties due to its size, it's distant from construction firm capable for the necessary bid work, or any other circumstances when the open bidding process would not work. Presently, both laws are being circumvented by a loophole created in the Act. AB 1409 seeks to close that loophole while preserving the flexibility of counties to provide services to their constituents while at the same time honoring the spirit of California law. I have with me representatives from the construction industry, Force Account Council, who are the sponsors of the bill. I expect a good deal of discussion and then would appreciate your consideration for an aye vote.
Witnesses in support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eddie Bernanke. I'm here on behalf of the Construction Industry Force Account Council, which is a nonprofit labor management organization whose sole goal is to ensure that public agencies adhere to the Public Contract Code. The California Uniform Public Contract Act Construction Contract Act was put in place to mitigate disputes between the construction industry and the public agencies on new construction work and the definition between new construction and maintenance. There were carrots put into that act to get counties, cities, and school districts and special districts to join the act and adhere to a strict accounting procedure which ensures that the public agencies are getting the best bang for their dollar in tax benefit from taxpayers by ensuring that they accurately account for the real cost of a construction project through the procedures of the act. despite the confusion that you may hear today about this bill, AB 429 is actually very simple. All we are asking is that we clarify within the Act that if you choose to be a member of the Act, that you will utilize the accounting procedures for the Act for all of your public works construction projects. There are 600 other agencies that have opted into the Act voluntarily, who have chosen to do so and use those accounting procedures. We don't see that there's any local control issue with this bill, as the Act provides for an option for counties to opt in and opt out if they'd like to utilize the provisions, and we're just asking that they make a delineation and a choice of whether or not they want to use the Act. And for these reasons, we'd ask for your aye vote.
Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, Jose Mejia, California State Council of Labor's, obviously in support for all the reasons outlined earlier, but I do want to take the opportunity to express my most sincere appreciation to the author, Assemblymember John Perez. He has, with staff, obviously has made every effort possible to accommodate the concerns of all the interested parties. This bill, we've put a whole language in there. We've taken language out. We've taken amendments and suggestions for the variety of people that in this room you'll find opposition from. And I just want to express my appreciation to the author, because I think that he has done an outstanding job in trying to come to closure with this. For the very many reasons that were outlined earlier, I strongly urge your support.
Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the State Association of Electrical Workers and the California State Pipe Trades Council and the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, for the previous listed reasons support the bill. I'd like to just make 2 points. I think you may hear from folks from Los Angeles County in a little bit in opposition. I represent a large unit of employees within the road department at the County of Los Angeles. It's clear that Los Angeles is not included in this bill. I think their argument centers around the fact that sometime in the future, if they wanted to opt into the Act, they would have to make a choice between the road commissioner provisions and the Act. I would just in response say that the County of Los Angeles has had 26 years to opt into the Act. They haven't. They have a very deliberative process, apparently, but I don't think they're going to do it anytime in the near future.
Is Senator Smidian from Los Angeles? No.
Secondly, there's an issue being raised that they need to have both options available to address emergency situations. And I'd just like to point out that Caltrans, which by far has the largest road jurisdiction, I think everyone would agree, in California, contracts out for emergency response work. They rotate it. They bid. Contractors have standing contracts to respond to emergencies. It rotates amongst contractors. It's a very efficient system. There's no reason why counties couldn't also adopt similar types of systems. So for the aforementioned reasons, we'd urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. This bill is important to close a loophole that has been overutilized. There's ambiguity in public contract code. It's a good government bill. We urge your support.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman and members, Danny Curtin, California Conference of Carpenters. We urge your support for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Dave Ackerman, representing the Associated General Contractors. We were the original sponsor of the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act in 1983. It's worked pretty well for 26 years of minimizing the force account disputes that used to exist between local government and the state, and we think the choice offered by the bill is the appropriate one, and ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Pedrati representing the Golden State Builders Exchanges and Engineering and Utility Contractors Association in support.
Tim Kremens, Operating Engineers, in support. And please remember, this is not mandatory on the counties. It's still optional.
Right.
Bob Wagner, Local 12 Operating Engineers, in support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes, Senator Smidian.
You were kind enough to reference me a moment ago.
I just want to know where you're from.
No, well, this, Assembly member, I need to go back to basics on this, so please bear with me. And some of these questions I think are going to sound a little naive. But before I can understand this conversation, I sort of need to understand how we got there. There are two things that drive debate in these chambers. First is public interest, and the second is private interest. So there's some question here, and neither of those are, in my view, inappropriate. That's fine. You got folks who advocate for their business interests or their members' interests or good. But to the extent we're called upon to referee those disputes, I'm trying to understand, what's going on here. More often than not, during my tenure in the legislature, I have heard from folks in the union world saying, please don't contract out services. Please make sure that the local government keeps those services at the city or county level. Today, the world is a little upside down based on my previous experience, and that says to me, there's clearly something I don't get, so I want to get it before I'm asked to vote on your bill. Going back to when all this got started a quarter of a century ago, what was the argument about then? Why do we have the law in the books now? Because, to most folks, if you say, well, if we've got some work to do and the folks who already work for us can do it, we ought to let them do it. And if they can't do it, then we'll go get somebody else. But clearly, there was a little bit of a push and shove back in the day. And if you could help illuminate what that's about so I can understand what the competing interests are here, that'd be helpful.
Sure. And as you know, Senator, I'm a little new around here, so some of my answers may sound simplistic, so if you'll bear with me as well. There's always, when you're dealing with government entities, and in particular with construction, there's a balance between that which is done within the government entity and that which is done through a publicly regulated bidding process. I mean, we quite frankly have a long history of regulating construction that we publicly fund. And the question becomes where the balance comes between that work which should be done by public employees and that work which should be publicly put out to bid. The concern here was a concern about two things. One, creating a safety net for rural counties that did not have access to folks to competitively bid on work, and making sure that they had a pathway to really do something different, contract in, take in work that had historically been done outside of public employment. But because of lack of proximity to firms that could bid on the work, they needed to figure out a pathway to do the work in-house. Then once you looked at a system by which you could do the work in-house, the question was how you monetized that work. We know how to account for somebody's wages. We have to figure out then how to prorate their benefit package so that we can compare the requirements that we have when something is put out to be competitively bid, where we have prevailing wage standards, and where we say that competition shouldn't be based on the ability to undercut somebody's wages, but rather that competition should happen based on the ability to efficiently manage the project at hand. So how do you compare apples to apples? The second becomes how do you then account for all the other resources that go in to finishing a project? That's what the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting did. It figured out a consistent formula that people could use to figure that the competition was actually occurring fairly. What's happened over the years, and your consultant is much more aware of some of the details than am I, what's happened over the years is there's been a move away from the historic way in which that competition has happened, and the decisions have happened to figure out that which should be done in-house versus put out to bid. And that which was created as a safety net has become a loophole. We attempted to close that loophole.
Let me interrupt just a second so that I can, because I want to understand what's going on here before I'm asked to vote on your bill. So the point was, back in the day, we want to provide this flexibility to local governments to do the work themselves. But clearly, that supposes that there's a reason for, in most instances, for bidding the work out of the organization to be the preferred route. And I'm trying to get at why people thought that was the preferred route. Now, one of the reasons you gave, as I understood it, was, well, it really is hard to evaluate what you're paying to get the work done if you don't have a clear bottom line figure based on folks moving around. Correct. Were there other concerns as well that made people say it's in the public interest whether to do that? And I thought you hinted at saying that, in fact, contrary to what we usually hear, that there might be a pressure to perform the work with underpaid public employees rather than prevailing wage private contract employees. Did I get that part right as well?
I think that in some cases that was the case.
So then are there other reasons that either you or your witnesses want to share about why it is a, quote, good thing to contract the work out rather than to have the organization do it themselves?
I'd be happy to allow either of my witnesses to go on. Let me just, if I may, take us a step further. The notion of transparency is paramount here in understanding what it is that you're actually paying for and getting. And there are certain efficiencies in going outside. Even if you're paying a higher prevailing wage rate, there are efficiencies in that a contractor that continues to do a certain type of highway repair would have equipment necessary to do that work, and you get to spread the cost of that equipment across all the work that they're bidding on in a way that a small locality wouldn't, because they wouldn't have the frequency of that work that would necessitate them having the equipment in place. So there is underlying an assumption that there is greater efficiency for the public and greater transparency through this competitive process. I just want to draw one other thing out, because you raised the issue of potentially conflict between a public interest and a private interest as we look at this work.
Or between different private interests as well.
Of course. But I want to speak to potentially the conflict between a public interest on the one hand and a private interest on the other. One of the things that we did as we've presented this bill through various committees is really try to get to some semblance of fairness that respects the flexibility that government needs in circumstances where they can't go out to bid. So one of the amendments that we took at the request of people that are now opposed to it was changing it and saying that there was an exemption for any public agency that wanted to use public employees to complete the work. And we even went so far as to say it could be public employees who were full-time employees, or it could be public employees who were part-time employees. And we did that at the behest of some of the previous opponents to the legislation. That didn't end up ultimately satisfying. So I was trying, if I may, I was trying to make sure that we didn't get into a situation where this legislation was creating a conflict between public employees and private employees.
This is my last question, and I thank the chair and the author for his patience. And is that because sometimes when people use force account, they don't use their own public employees, they are able to use private labor for force account? So while we think of doing it inside, in fact, they've actually used people from outside the organization to do that work?
Yes.
Okay. That may have been obvious to everybody else, and I apologize if I'm the only one in the room who wasn't focusing on that, but that's helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
If I may, Senator, though, I did my best effort to add clarity. My sponsors, my witnesses, actually have a greater degree of knowledge about this, and if you would be so kind as allowing them to add a little bit of information, would that be okay with the chair?
That would be fine.
There's one, I think, component being missed to your question, Senator Samiti, and that was that there's force account levels spread throughout the entire public contract code. Every district or municipality has its own section that sets a different force account level, mosquito abatement districts to school districts. And there was, the theory originally was that to limit the forces so that a robust competitive bid process would provide the best deal for the taxpayer, but there was this constant pressure by governmental agencies to increase that force account level. And so the debate happened with the Uniform Cost Accounting Act, and the agreement was, well, we will allow you to go to a higher force account level, and it will be indexed to inflation, but in return, you need to adopt these accounting practices. And that was really what brought about the Uniform Cost Accounting Act.
And through the chair, just to follow up on this point, Mr. Royce, so do I understand you correctly? You're not so much worried that the head of roads and airports at the county is going to yell down the hall to Sam or Samantha, hey, would you go fix this? You're more worried that he's going to pick up the phone and call somebody outside his organization to just do the job without bidding the job. Do I have that part right?
The latter is certainly a primary concern.
Thank you. I'm getting it.
Anything else you want to? Fine. Senator Walk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions that have been raised in some of these letters that I need answers for. So let me just read some of them. First of all, from the County of Los Angeles, there are unanticipated consequences in their view about what this means. And that theme is sort of reflected in most of the letters from the counties. So there's an issue here as to whether the legislation would affect their ability to use work programs that utilize juvenile and probation workers from the probation department, other programs such as the sheriff early release, the fire department camp crews, court referrals or wards of the court, and general relief workers. County of Sacramento raises the issue in a July 9th letter. I represent the County of Sacramento along with three other counties, talking about the current process working well and that they use it to expedite critical projects for the airports and the parks. In their view, the latest amendments would negatively impact local transportation projects. San Diego talks about, again, California Conservation Corps probation crews or volunteers to provide valuable services on road projects such as litter removal, weed abatement, and culvert cleanup. The bill would end up prohibiting the county's ability to use part-time or temporary workers, such as student workers in learning jobs or apprenticeships. My counties are all over the map here in terms of whether they're a signatory or not, who performs the work internally, operating engineers sometimes, SEIU and others, and the force account amounts are fairly significant. I'd like some answers to that. I have a lot of concerns about that, representing fairly poor counties, and who knows what we're going to do to them come the end of the week.
Sure. Look, if I may, Senator, I'll start with the County of Los Angeles, the county I live in, the county that my entire district is in. They are not signatory to the Act. Correct. This legislation has no impact on them whatsoever. The County of San Diego, the last county you referenced, is also not signatory to the Act. This legislation has no impact on them whatsoever. Sacramento County is signatory to the Act. We don't believe that this legislation creates the limitations that they're raising in this letter. And quite frankly, this legislation doesn't preclude them from doing any of those things. They just have to choose whether or not to use the Road Commissioner process or to use the Uniform Cost Accounting Act process. It is 100% their choice. They get to select by act of their board of supervisors, and then by informing the controller. Now, if they make an election and later find that that is not the preferable election, by the same act, they can go back to their board of supervisors, change their mind, decide not to, or they can make the opposite decision, inform the controller, and act accordingly. I understand that what my assumption of what their opposition is that right now they don't have to choose. They get to pick and choose. And quite frankly, I think there's a distinction between allowing choice and between allowing them to pick and choose on a case-by-case basis, and that which was originally intended to create flexibility and to create a pathway for work to be done where otherwise there were barriers has now been used to expand the work in a very different direction. I'm bothered by the reference in one of those letters, and I'm not sure which one, to the reference that this legislation would in some way limit the ability, for example, to do apprenticeship. Quite frankly, the people that are all here testifying in favor of this legislation are the greatest proponents and the greatest instructors in the apprenticeship process. They are the people that create the educational opportunity to take somebody from no skills or limited skills to very high levels of skills that are very transferable and allow people to have a decent quality of life and competition. So I'm particularly bothered by the assertion that this bill would in some way undermine the ability for us to create that pathway in the apprenticeship process. I know it's not your assertion, you're just raising a point that's been made.
These are themes that are reflected in all of the letters.
Right.
So that's why I asked you about that. That is my concern, particularly since the bill was amended, none of this is viable any longer, and simply has one section, and that is to repeal 22031 of the Public Contract Code. So I think, we always have to be careful of the unintended consequences of our actions,
And I would agree with you.
particularly when we're going to be doing to counties and cities the kinds of things we're going to be doing over the next.
I agree with you that we always have to be concerned with the unintended consequences. And quite frankly, I think that this legislation serves to create a response to the unintended consequences of previous action, to allow a flexibility to be used as a loophole, one. Second of all, I appreciate your questions, and quite frankly, I appreciate the way in which your office has attempted to work with us on ideas that you think would make the bill better. I am frustrated, however, by the fact that until this hearing, as we've gone through every other step of the process, we have met with everybody who has raised issues with this, attempted to take amendments, had to draft the amendments ourselves and take them back. There was only one amendment ever offered to us before we came today. We accepted it, and then the proponents of that very amendment then took issue with the amendment that we took. We have worked in incredible good faith to try to make this a process that fixes a problem rather than one that tries to create one.
Be careful about offering amendment.
Thank you. I just, I'll make some comments before I vote.
Questions by other members of the committee? Are there witnesses in support? Other witnesses in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Todd Blumstein, on behalf of the Southern California Contractors Association, in support.
Mr. Chair, Phil Vermeulen, representing the Engineering Contractors, Fence Contractors, Flasher Barricade Association, and Marin Builders Exchange.
In strong support.
Other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Today. Mr. Chairman, Senators, Terry Brennan on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. Let me also echo the comments of some of the people participating in this bill over time. I really appreciate the work of the author and the author's staff on trying to find a way through this sometimes complicated world of public and private push-pull on contracting and the use of public forces. We actually removed our opposition and were satisfied with the last version of the bill prior to these offered authors' amendments. Those went more to Senator Simitian's point of sort of limiting the access a county road commissioner might have to outside work, day laborers, untrained workforces, and made sure that the work was in its last version of the printed version you have before you is either going to be done internally by trained workforce or externally through contract by professionally trained road crews. We were satisfied with those and had expressed that to the author. These latest set of amendments just force agencies to make a choice without having any protections to where this work is going to go. I find it really odd that we would choose this moment in time when you're going to be have voted on one version of the budget. We'll be voting on another soon that takes $1 billion out of the fund that funds this actual work. And we're going to further restrict the county's ability to use their best judgment as to which forces and which contractors they use. I take a little issue with some of this is not necessarily a fight about internal and external forces. The Uniform Cost Accounting Act was created to make sure that when you contracted, you acted under the same rules. You didn't make up one set of contracting rules for one set of contractors who might be friends of boards of supervisors and one set for others. That if you contracted out, once you made that choice, once you exceeded the force account limit, you were going to abide by the same rules. That's what the Public Contracting Code is about. That's what the Uniform Contracting Code is about. It's not about do it internal, do it external. And for those reasons, we remain opposed to this version of the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Deanne Baker representing the California State Association of Counties. Unfortunately, we're here to strongly contend that AB 1409 is actually very detrimental and not in the best interest of the public. With all due respect to some of the earlier arguments, I would like to offer that we believe road commissioner authority was intended to apply to all 58 counties. All 58 counties have remote areas, whether they're urban or rural, and I think that's why you'll see opposition from both the Urban Counties Caucus as well as the Regional Council of Rural Counties here today. I have with me Supervisor Mike McGowan from Yolo County, who also is the chair of the CSAC Housing, Land Use, and Transportation Committee, to provide you a perspective from the elected officials' viewpoint. And I have with me Patrick DeCellis, who's with the LA County Department of Public Works and also an officer of the County Engineers Association of California, which of course make up the road commissioners throughout the state, to provide some further technical advice because of the complicated area in which we're dealing with today. So with that, I'd like Supervisor McGowan to make his comments.
Well, I'll try. Thank you very much, and I appreciate being given this opportunity. I must confess, even though I'm the chair of the Transportation, Housing, and Land Use Subcommittee for CSAC and currently chair of the Yolo County Board of Supervisors, I've been there for a hell of a long time, I'm having a hard time figuring out what the problem is we're trying to solve with this particular legislation. It looks, to some extent, to me like a solution in search of a problem. And especially in these times, it perhaps is possible that this bill could be amended to a point where it could be acceptable to local jurisdictions. It is not in that state right now. I don't know what happened in the conversations with the author, a candidate. I was not directly involved. I'm led to believe we weren't really successful in those conversations, and if there's a greater opportunity to engage, I'd be happy to try to structure some balance on this. But as it sits, we are opposed to it, both Yolo County and CSAC. And I have to say, with all due respect, this is a terrible time to be considering a bill that invariably and ultimately will cost local jurisdictions more money. The additional cost of administration here are significant. They're real. They will cost us something. And I'm worried of what's going to come out of the work of this body over the course of the next several weeks, as far as what the impacts are going to be to all citizens of California, and quite frankly, the impacts that they're going to be on the citizens of Yolo County. I know you have to consider the taking certain funds that we've come to expect and believe are rightfully ours to do road work with, the HUDA funds. That's on the block. It may go. The Proposition 42, that money's supposed to be suspended. Our local streets and roads are an integral part of the system. There's some figures were thrown out earlier about the amount of work that Caltrans does. Caltrans is less than 20% of the road system for the state of California. 80%, over 80% is local streets and roads. Folks out there in the pickup trucks are trying to keep them going. We're having to return roads to gravel in Yolo County. We can't keep them up to date. There's not enough money in the state for all of the counties to maintain all of the local streets and roads the next 20 years. We've already done the analysis comprehensively. We are hurting for certain. And anything you do that costs us more money is just wrong at this time. I'd urge you, the way the bill is structured today, to oppose this bill. And at the very least, no action should be taken that might cause local jurisdictions more money, especially as it relates to streets and roads, until we've resolved the physical crisis that we have in California today. You folks are going to have to work very, very hard, and still it's going to be just miserable when we're done. So I urge you to oppose this bill.
Other witnesses in opposition?
Yes, good afternoon.
Try to be brief.
My name is Pat DeCellis. I'm a Deputy Director for the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Works, and I am also President-elect of the County Engineers Association of California. I don't know how many times the proponents mentioned County of Los Angeles in their testimony, so I'd like to clarify some points that they raised. The issue that we have with the bill is, and I don't think that they clarified your questions, Senator, with regards to what this does and what this doesn't do. But the County of Los Angeles, almost 100,000 employees, has a multitude of departments. Department of Public Works is just one of many departments that contract out for construction work. We have our beaches and harbors departments, we have our parks and recs, to name just a couple. If one of those other departments should so choose to elect to use the Uniform Cost Accounting Act provisions, our department would then be precluded.
Which they've never done in 24 years.
That is correct.
Thank you.
That is never done in 24 years, but doesn't mean that they wouldn't do it tomorrow given the change of the fiscal situation. We would then be precluded from using the road commissioner's authority. The bill pits one department, whether it's in the County of Los Angeles, the County of San Diego, the County of Riverside, pits one department versus another. It's you're all in or you're all out. I'd like to also explain the use of our road funds. They are audited every year by the State Controller's Office. Seemed to be that we could use our road funds for anything we wanted to do, and that's not correct. Also, all of our rates include overheads, benefits, depreciation of equipment. Why? Because we do a lot of work that's either grant-funded or reimbursable work, and we want to ensure that we cover all of our costs. All of the county road commissioner's authority that we have today is governed by other sections of the Public Contract Code, meaning that the road commissioner does not have any informal contracting authority. The road commissioner makes the decision whether or not we do the work with our own forces, or if we're going to contract out, we have to follow all the other provisions of the Public Contract Code and not picking up the phone and calling whoever we wanted. One more piece of fact. Over the last 2 years, County of Los Angeles contracted out for more than $100 million of road construction work while doing less than $10 million with our own forces. Keep in mind, when we do force account work, a lot of it is also contracted out for the materials and the equipment that we use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, members, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, representing the boards of supervisors of 30 rural counties. Just briefly, I want to touch upon some of the points Mr. Simitian made, and if I can, kind of give just a very brief response to his points. First of all, keep in mind, as was referenced, we are talking about work that is done predominantly in rural areas. Even in large urban counties, they have rural areas. And the reason the Road Commissioner Authority was given was so that those needs of those areas could be met. And having road discretion authority, whether to send it out to bid or do in-house, really centers on three things. That is the timetable for delivering the product or the project, the cost to the taxpayer, and the efficient use of the staff time. It is really those are the three functions that determine whether this discretion is going to be made. As my colleague, Mr. DeCellis, it's not about just picking up the phone. As stated before, this bill really pits various county departments within other county departments. Really, at the end, we believe will not serve the taxpayer, the staff, or those users of any of the facilities that are constructed one bit of good, and thus we remain in opposition.
I allowed about 6 people on both sides to give testimony, so from now, the others, just briefly state your name, organization. I think we've heard both support from multiple sources and opposition from multiple. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don Peterson on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of San Joaquin and Kern counties and a bunch of others in opposition to the bill. We'll associate ourselves with the remarks already made.
Thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Holly Fermini with Platinum Advisors on behalf of the County of Orange and San Bernardino opposed the bill.
Mr. Chairman and members, Bill Doring representing Imperial County, we're also opposed.
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, in opposition.
Julian Voris on behalf of the Urban Counties Caucus, also opposed.
Leslie McFadden on behalf of Sacramento County Board of Supervisors and Urban County in opposition.
Monica Miller on behalf of the County of Santa Barbara in opposition. Thank you.
Senator Walk.
Yes, I'd like to, if with the chair's permission, ask Deanne to come back from CSAC, please. One of the issues that's been raised is pitting the Department of Works against other departments. You made some suggestions when these amends came forward. that might be a possible compromise, and I'd like you to describe that, and then I'd like the author to explain what's wrong with it.
Sure. As previously mentioned, when it comes to being part of the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, every department is part of it, or they're not part of it. Right. And 32 of the counties have decided to be part of it. All this amendment does is suggest that Public Works is going to have to convince Parks Department, flood control, airports, solid waste, every other county Department of General Services, every other county department is going to have to agree to give up the benefits of the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act in order for the road commissioner to retain their authority that we're so desperately seeking to retain, to make sure that we don't increase the cost of projects going out in the transportation arena. We understood from some meetings with the sponsors that they didn't want us to be able to choose between the Act and road commissioner authority. So what we've suggested is, okay, we're fine with that. We will make a decision, but don't make us force all other county departments to go along with that decision, because that's a very difficult thing to accomplish. So what we're suggesting is let the road commissioner opt out of the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act in order to retain road commissioner authority.
And the problem with that?
I'm not fully sure that I appreciate what it is you're suggesting, Senator. So are you suggesting that we make... I'm sorry?
I thought that was a reasonable compromise.
No,
he's just trying to understand.
I'm trying to make sure I understand it so I can respond to it. So is your suggestion then that a potential solution here would be to allow for this legislation only to relate to its applicability to road construction and related, and completely bifurcate them from all other departments, so that we would apply this to roads, construction and maintenance, and the decision that a county would make whether or not to elect to use the Uniform Cost Accounting Act or the road commissioner language would be binding with respect to its road work, but nothing else?
Yeah, the way the bill's drafted now, it basically penalizes 32 of the 58 counties. The other 26 have the ability to retain road commissioner authority. We think it's going to be very difficult for the 32 counties that this bill would capture to be able to convince the other departments to opt out and be able to retain road commissioner authority. So that's what we would like to see, is that those counties have the ability to separate from the other departments. If they choose to utilize road commissioner authority, they will forego their authority under the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act to do road work.
I'm very uncomfortable asking you to, here to do that right here. I understand how difficult that is, and it's not the best legislation. Right. We did have the chair who told me that there would be another meeting off the floor on Thursday. On Thursday. The vice chair graciously agreed to extend a waiver. If you think that that's something you would consider seriously, then let's try and make something work here. And if not, then that's fine. Then we'll just move forward.
Well, Senator, I've got to tell you that I don't understand the benefit of doing that. I think that in a sense, is basically a restatement of current law in practical application. So I'd like to move forward and have the bill considered as it is today. Thank you.
Senator Simitian.
Let me ask the author to rethink that. Again,
the choice would be not to make the decision right now, to hold off on a vote, and to come back on Thursday, and either to accept it on Thursday or not to accept it on Thursday, and to put it up for a vote the way it is. It's your choice, Assembly Member.
Mr. Chairman, I've got no problem putting off a vote until Thursday. What I don't want to do is give the impression that I'm committed to that solution or something very similar to that solution. I'm more than happy to consider that with other things and come back to you on Thursday.
That's exactly what we would be willing. That is what I'm offering you, and the Vice Chair has also agreed to support a rule waiver so that this could go forward. But that would be your choice.
I appreciate that opportunity, and I'll exercise it as long as I'm not committing to take that as the outcome.
There's no commitment. No commitment.
Then I just wanted to. No, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that I'm being forthright
now and
in my
Thursday, you need to work something, or if you choose to, whether it's this or something, to come back to this committee with an amendment, if you choose to do that. If not, we'll vote on the bill as it is.
I'm very happy to work in good faith to see if we can achieve some resolution. We'll do everything we can to try to make progress between now and Thursday. But I want to be very clear that quite possibly we may come back Thursday.
Absolutely.
Just with what's before you today.
And we offer you the opportunity to vote now, if that's really
Mr. Chair.
I appreciate the opportunity to come back on Thursday.
I'd like to thank the Assembly member, and I'd also like to ask the Chair's permission to include the staff in that meeting.
We would be happy to have
Absolutely.
the new grandfather join us.
With that, we're going to hold off voting on this bill. We will hear this bill. We will vote. We will not go through, unless you choose to take amendments, we will not go through another full presentation. We will only talk about any additional amendments on Thursday, if you choose to take some.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
With that, we're going to lift the call on all of the items. Will the Secretary please, we're going to go through. Please be quiet as we leave the room. Will the Secretary please call the roll and announce the vote of the Chair and the Vice Chair?
Item number 1, SCR 50.
That's the
6-0.
consent calendar, members.
Yeah. That is our one consent item. Current vote 6-0. Chair aye, Vice Chair aye. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Harmon.
Consent calendar. Item.
Harmon aye. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe aye. Oropeza. Oropeza aye. 10-0.
Consent calendar has 10 votes. That bill is out. No. Next bill, AB 566.
As amended? Yes.
As amended.
Current vote 5-3. Chair aye. Vice Chair no. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Hollingsworth.
You already voted.
You can't vote for Hollingsworth.
You voted on it. Yeah. You did. Oropeza?
Nava, AB 566.
Number 2.
Item number 2.
Oropeza aye. 7-3.
Bill has 7 votes. That bill is out. Next bill, AB 6, item number 3, AB 628, Assembly Member Block.
Current vote 4-0. Chair aye. Vice Chair aye. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Harmon.
Aye.
Harmon aye. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe aye. Oropeza. Aye. Oropeza aye. Semidian. 8-1.
Bill has 8 votes. That bill is out. Next bill, AB 636, Jones, Charter Party Carriers, Bus Drivers.
As amended.
As amended.
Current vote 4-2. Chair aye. Vice Chair no. DeSaulnier.
Aye.
DeSaulnier aye. Harmon. Aye. Harmon aye. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe aye. Oropeza.
There's no amendments to that on
Oropeza aye. 8-2. 8-2.
8 votes. That bill is out. Next, the item number 5, AB 744, Tarico, was pulled from today and will be heard on Thursday. If we do get a rule, a rule waiver. Next is AB 1175.
As amended.
As amended, Assembly Member Torlakson, toll facilities.
Current vote 8-1. Chair aye. Vice Chair aye. Hollingsworth. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe aye. 9-1.
Bill has 9 votes. The bill is out. And then the last one, AB 1409, also with a rule waiver agreed upon by both Chair and Vice Chair. That will be heard on Thursday, but we still need a formal rule waiver. With that, this committee is adjourned.
Just till Thursday.
Huh?